Somebody said massage your books while explaining what they're about. Well, I recently went and gathered every book I've written that I printed into paperback, starting from the first to the most recent. So if you want, we will start at the beginning and make our way forward. This is Apocalypse Theory, and I wrote it when I was just a baby. This book is chaos in book form. What happens in this book is there's a nuclear explosion all across the world, Armageddon, and it breaks time. And the characters fall into the future where myth becomes reality. And other people from all different times all fall into this future that creates kind of a fantasy world that's filled with, it's from here to here. There's a zombie outbreak from the chaos, so the people that actually don't fall through time right away, they have to fight zombies. But when they eventually fall through time, they run into dinosaurs. And the devil has raised this demon army for Armageddon. And the main character has the staff of Moses. I'm telling you, this book is chaos. This is a high school kid writing chaos. The main character has the staff of Moses, and his 3 sidekicks all have their own superpowered weapons, and they have to try and stop the devil from raising a demon army to conquer the world using fantasy creatures and people from different times. And so basically, if you get scratched by a demon sword, they put zombie blood on it. So if you fight them and you even get scratched, you will turn into a zombie. But if they kill you, their swords have the power to form you into a demon. So anyone who dies rises up as a demon to fight in the demon army and join the ranks. But anyone who merely gets scratched rises up as a zombie in the enemy ranks. And that's the army they're facing. And they have, we'll do 3 minutes per book. They have, they join forces with other armies through time. So there's Roman legions, and they end up in a fight in New York. I was working a lot in Manhattan, so a lot of my books take place in Manhattan. So the final battle is this giant demon army versus these Roman legions, but then you have these kind of United States Marines platoons, and then you have this group of werewolves at the same time, and then you have these 2 Civil War soldiers, so like a Confederate kind of legion and then a Union legion, and each one picks a street in New York, and they all fight this demon army that's coming at them, and they're all tasked with holding a street. And then you have, like, in Central Park, they drop a helicopter to try and distract the army, so they take a Huey helicopter and drop a unit mixed with everyone in it, and so they fight on top of a rock and try to hold out. I can't remember, they had a mission or something, and then there's somehow the main character ends up on the Empire State Building. This book is chaos. And I fixed it up later. It's actually called The Sword and the Staff now. You can't find this book. I went through a publishing company. Anyway. Yeah, The Sword and the Staff is actually what this book is now, because I went through and I was like, this book needs editing bad. Years ago I did that. That book probably needs editing. So that led me to this book. So, this book is Sapiens. And what this book is, it's Twilight. Twilight this is 2010. Twilight's the #1 book in the world, and it's just popping off. And here I am at a wedding. And this book is about these super soldier kids that they're injected with a serum in the womb that makes them super smart. I think it's been so long, I don't even remember this one. Don't even remember my own book. So when they're born, these kids end up with super abilities, which are just magical powers, like the power to wield, like some can wield ice, telepathy, that kind of stuff. But like 5 of the kids escape the government holding facility, and they basically go on the lam, and they go undercover and move in somewhere hidden. And then 3, including the main character, they have a different ability. Their ability is that they're super smart, like their intelligence is off the chart. And 2 of the intelligent people are older, and the main character is the younger of the 3 intelligent people. And they were separated from the other 5. So when the 5 escaped, they stayed back, and they were hired. Phone just rang. Their first task was to basically find the others and capture them and bring them back. So the characters use their super intelligence to find the others and kind of infiltrate them. And their job is to go in there and infiltrate them and basically join them and then capture them and bring them back eventually. But their plan is to infiltrate, find out what they know about, because there's resistance groups to the government and stuff. So they're in there trying to figure that out and get information. But the main character falls for the girl, and they have like a love triangle, which is like filled with betrayal and all that. But Twilight was, this is how it's like Twilight. Twilight was the hit book at the time. So I went through and I was like, what made Twilight so special? And I went to chapter 1 of Twilight, and I read chapter 1, and then I wrote this book to match chapter 1. And I went to chapter 2 of Twilight, because I'm trying to figure out how to write books. So every single chapter in this book is the same as Twilight. Like Bella meets Edward, and in this chapter, that's where they meet, and they meet in a similar way, like in school. And it's a confrontation, but the confrontation's different. It's like, you found us. Where in Twilight, it was like, I can smell you. So that's kind of verbatim until you get here, like the climax ending scene. I just go off the rails. This turns into its own book here, but from here to here, it's every chapter is matched in sync with Twilight. It's kind of a weird quirk of this book. You could literally open Twilight and open this book and read them side by side and see how they're similar. It's kind of cool. But that was me trying to figure it out. So this would be my first real success. You know this one. I wrote this next. This is Hurricane Dan. And this one, it actually came out before The Walking Dead. I think there was an undertow where everyone wanted Walking Dead stuff. Like they wanted zombie stuff. And I think The Walking Dead eventually filled that hole. It was like, okay, we've gotten a lot of zombie stuff, but there's a gap in zombie stories. And every zombie, I think I watched a zombie show, and I'm like, I'm just so fascinated in seeing zombies take over and just watching society go from normal every day to something's wrong to like, yeah, something's definitely wrong to like, oh, we're overwhelmed. Oh, society is breaking down. Oh my gosh, now we're like hiding. Now we're just overwhelmed. Now it's just us alone. And just that slow breakdown. So they're in Manhattan, and it's just like a normal day, normal story, and then zombies slowly start to take over. And it's a finish. At the end, they solve the zombie outbreak, and there's never really. I hated the idea that in every zombie movie, there's always like the people working against you. You go somewhere and you get robbed, and it's kind of like the zombies are the background focus, and then the people are the real bad guys, and zombies are in between. You know, it's like Negan. Rick Grimes isn't fighting the zombies, he's fighting Negan. The zombies are just in between them. And the story's between Rick and Negan. And I was like, and this was before all that, obviously, but every zombie story's like, that's its setup. And I just wanted it to be purely focused on the zombies and people just trying to survive this chaos. So that's what it is. It's a good start to finish. And they just have to hold out and help the military. The story is they find a briefcase of cash in the beginning, so kind of the goal is to survive with the cash long enough so that the military can eventually gain control of the zombie outbreak. And yeah, fun fact. So there's a game called StarCraft, and in StarCraft there is you can custom build games. So there was a custom game in StarCraft that was called Resident Evil, and it was all about you would hold these streets, and slowly the barricades would get overwhelmed, and you would lose a barricade, and you'd eventually get pushed back to this center location. And whereas everyone's fighting as a team spread out, but as you lose streets and barricades, you're getting closer to the middle of the city, and you're like getting squeezed till eventually everyone's back to back towards the end of the game. And I love that game. I would play it all the time. So I put that into here, the way they fall back like that. So technically, this is a book based on a game, inside of a game, that's based on a movie, that's based on a video game. Because they made it for Resident Evil Raccoon City, the popular Resident Evil movie at the time. So it's just like, okay, so there was a video game, and someone made a movie about it. And then someone made a custom video game inside of StarCraft about that. And then I wrote a book about that game. Kind of funny. This is probably the book I've gotten the most praise for. This is Takedown. I'd say so zombie fever was high. Hurricane Dan made it to the front page of zombies under search. And I've never really made money off of any of my books, but Hurricane Dan, for 3 weeks, I made between $200 and $400. And I was just blown away. I was like, holy crap, I'm making hundreds of dollars a week? Like, I made $200 off this book this week? And it did that for 3 weeks in a row. And then it dropped down. Like, I'll have $20 months, sometimes maybe make $40. Not now, like when the books came out. Like now I'll make like $7 a month maybe off books. But that was just, I was making $200 or $300, a week. And I was so hyped up about it that I went and I wrote this book in 90 days. Like, I was like just hyped. I was like, I could do this for a living. And I was like, this isn't a side hobby right now. Like, I have the time off work. I'm gonna go and work for 8 hours a day, and I'm gonna write this for 8 hours a day. And I didn't do it for the whole book, but I did it for a big enough chunk that within 90 days, this book the rough draft was completely complete. And what this is a kid decides he's a freshman in high school. He's just kind of an idiot. He's popular, and his buddies talk him into embarrassing his girlfriend. And so he decides he's going to break up with her at a party. And instead of doing it and being classy, he breaks up with her in a humiliating way. Like, he decides to just yell it to her in front of the whole party and just humiliates her, and she runs off. So they wake up in the morning and they actually find her overdosed on the floor, and she's just dead. So he is so guilty and so traumatized that he's like completely blames himself, and his friends kind of push him into it, but he did it. Like, it's all his fault, and he just carries this burden. And so he right before he's leaving, the cops are there. It's like chaos. The ambulance is there. His parents come to pick him up, and he looks in the neighbor's yard, and he sees her ghost standing there, just staring at him like, you did this to me. Like, this is your fault. And he just has this anxiety attack. And then the book fast forwards to his senior year, and he's just this basket case. He went from the popular cool kid to just like a shell of his former self, just hidden, just covered in anxiety. Like, he needs Xanax in his pocket just to function. And he ends up having an incidental run-in with a couple wrestlers. And he ends up joining the wrestling team in the book, because I wrestled in high school. So I just talked through him, like, getting good at wrestling and joining wrestling and then becoming good at the sport, and how it pulls him out of his anxiety and out of this bad place he's in. And eventually in this school, because actually in my school a lot of kids actually died through the years. Like, we had one or two kids die a year in my school throughout all the grades when I was going through school, and that just always struck me as crazy. So in this school it's the same, but he discovers that there might just be a serial killer, and that maybe it wasn't his fault and his girlfriend did not take her own life, but she was actually murdered. So he has to try and figure it out and solve the murder and save the day, and then fall for the best friend interest as they both try to discover what happened to her best friend and his girlfriend. And I was trying to write a book on wrestling, and I was working hanging siding. This is what I did, hung commercial siding, and I was making panels, and I was listening to my headphones, and there's a song called The Freshman by the Verve Pipe. And if you've ever heard the song Freshman by Verve Pipe, that was on, and I just couldn't figure out how to wrap wrestling into a story. And once I heard that song, he talks about how his girlfriend takes pills and how he's just so guilty that he went on vacation. Like, he left her and went on a vacation to forget her, and then she took pills and slept, the song says. And I just heard that and I was like, yes, kid uses wrestling to get over this horrible thing. And that's kind of how it all started. Ended up as Takedown. And this book, so it got nominated for the Florida Teens Read Committee in 2015, but for some reason, like, it was shipped out to all the schools, ready, set to go. And when the time came for Florida Teens Read to do it, and they announced all the books for that year, it wasn't in there. And I think it was the Florida Everglades, some Florida high school. They actually were preemptively reading the book, getting ready for the Florida Teens Read. And one day they just dropped it. Never said a word, never heard about it again, and that was it. I was afraid to ask. I was afraid to be like, what'd you guys do? Why isn't my book in there? Why did you take Takedown out of Florida Teens Read Committee, people? Like, a year or two ago, I finally got the guts, and I was like, I'm gonna inquire for a few years back, and none of the emails worked. This was what I wrote next. Dead by Dawn. And I wrote Dead by Dawn because I wanted to I read The Sandlot, which is a Stephen King's book. Or The Sandlot. That's a great base. This is a movie about baseball that Stephen King wrote. No, Salem's Lot, written by Stephen King. It's where a town slowly gets taken over by vampires. And again, it's going back to Hurricane Dan. It's kind of that love of, I love seeing like what it would be like if this supernatural thing happened, and how would a normal society function and handle this crisis that's slowly overtaking this town of Salem's Lot, which is vampires are slowly taking over the whole town. And the book kind of ends with, spoiler alert, the town is just this empty wasteland, and the vampires just move on, or whatever happens at the end. It's been years since I read it, but in the end, I remember they're just saying, like, people go into this town, it's just empty buildings, and no one really knows what happened. And I was like, that's cool, and I like the idea of Salem's Lot, but why would vampires just come in, take over one little town in the middle of America? Like, what do they stop at the boundary line of Salem's Lot and be like, nope, we're not going over to Chesterville. That's the county line. We only eat people on this side. And I was like, no, they're going to take over. They're going to start here, and then they're going to spread, and it's going to take over all of the United States. So I was like, what if Salem's Lot kept going? That's how Dead by Dawn was. It's a lot like Hurricane Dan, to be honest, because it's like that slow breakdown of society, people making excuses, people trying to figure out what's going on as the vampires become more prominent in the story, until it's just like, we're fighting for our lives, we're quarantined, and again, it's everyone's working together for the most part, because there's zombies, there's familiars. I mean, vampires have familiars, so that is the one exception is, sometimes you can get infiltrated by familiars. Like, at one point, people are quarantining inside of a high school, and they're using LED lights that are like suntan bed lights. They've replaced all the schools, so at night, they keep all the lights on, and then no vampire can get into the school, and then all the people, everyone all across the country is going to their designated quarantine zones, which are these schools. And then the lights will be on all night, and they'll be safe to sleep, and in the day there's no vampires, they can go out. And a familiar sabotages the generator running those lights. So there's like this chaos of group of people in the school fighting these vampires that can now break in once they're let in. And it's just like, there's this one point where the character's running and he's got a jug of holy water. I always thought this was cool. And he's running to figure out the generator, and like, people are screaming all over. It's chaos, it's dark, and he's just running to get to the generator, and he's got this holy water to protect him in case he sees a vampire. And a vampire turns a corner at the same time he does, and they collide, and the holy water hits his chest as he hits the vampire, and it just splashes up in both their face and melts the vampire's face off. And it's just like a freak thing, but then he doesn't have holy water anymore, but it took out the vampire that would have taken him out. So now he's got to get to the generator unarmed kind of deal. Stuff like that. And then people did, it kind of wraps up in the end. Like this, I end the story, it's a complete book. And so there a couple people are like, that book finishes too fast. But I'm learning, I'm putting it together. This is, you've seen this. This is, okay. This was my last book published, but I didn't write it last. So I'm going to do this one different. This one took so long to edit that my next book came out before this one came out. So I don't know which one's right for me to show you first, but I wrote this one way before I wrote the next one. And basically, this is just a man who's like, I guess you can essentially think that he has the powers of Wolverine from X-Men. Like, he can't die, and he heals from any wound, and he doesn't age. And he is born So with this book, I wanted to show 3 things. And the first thing is spoiler alert, because I wanted to throw a twist in, but here's the twist at the beginning of the book, is he's in the 1920s, or kind of like 1915, and they have a Model T, motorized cars are just becoming part of the world, and he's being experimented on, and his father's making this, his father's trying to live forever, so he's trying to create these pills that'll make you live forever, and he doesn't really care about his son, so he uses his son, Constantine, this guy, he gives him the pills and just experiments on him all the time, just knowing that they have shared DNA, and so he's a guinea pig, but as a result, he gets these powers. And then the big twist happens in the beginning. Are you ready? Fast forward 20 seconds. Here you go. It's pre-Noah's flood. This is the pre-Noah's flood society. And so the flood happens, and his dad never gets the pills or anything. So he wakes up, and he's the last person on Earth. And then he stumbles upon this giant wooden boat, and he meets Noah. And then it goes to the Tower of Babel. But then it eventually turns into going to Greece, and he goes to the Library of Alexandria, and he meets Cleopatra and Caesar, and then he goes and meets Vikings. He's at Pompeii, and it's told like a Forrest Gump style, like he is sitting there telling someone this story, and it moves forward, and it goes into the New America eventually, and like they do Vikings, and then New America. He sees a civil war, he sees a revolution, he goes to Salem's Lot, I should say. So Salem's Lot, then a revolution, then the Civil War, and he ends up in World War II, and he ends up getting found out by the government, and in the 60s, like, he gets captured by the government, and they let him out during Vietnam times, and it comes, like, all the way full circle to modern day, and he's like, that's my life. And it's just like this Forrest Gump story that's all through human history, but it's from the first half is like a Bible history kind of, and then it moves on to like about Greece times. It moves on to like documented, times, whatever. So the problem is the book was it covers such a span, and it's such a weird story style that's like, how do you keep a consistent story over that amount of time? And it might bog down a little in the middle, but if you like the adventure, it's still awesome. But it's like the story picks up at the end, and it all does come full circle, and it wraps up in a nice story. But in the middle, I'd say like from here to here, you're just like on an adventure through time with him. So while I was editing this and trying to get this all ironed out and straightened out, I wrote this and published this. And this is The Great Influencer. And the story behind this was The Great Gatsby had come out, was coming to public domain, and I realized that it was like, in 6 months, The Great Gatsby will be public domain. And I thought, so you can write a story about The Great Gatsby. It's no longer owned, it's public domain. So I was like, well, what if I took The Great Gatsby and set it modern day? And instead of being bootlegging and all that stuff, it's about YouTubers and TikTokers, and it's about Vine. And it's kind of like this. So this is 2019. So it's this pre-pandemic. It's already, things change so much that it just captures this pre-pandemic YouTube moment in time. And it's that moment when Mr. Beast hadn't come around yet. And David Dobrik was the #1 YouTuber pretty much. And I don't know if you remember, David Dobrik was making a weekly vlog, and it's just kind of crazy. And so they had the Vlog Squad. Alright. And so this is kind of like a similar, like these YouTubers have a Vlog Squad, and it's how this one guy goes from nothing, and he meets this mysterious vlogger who makes these crazy videos, and his cousin's a YouTuber, so he goes out to California to kind of collab with his cousin and grow his YouTube channel. And he meets this guy who came up on TikTok in 2019's TikTok and is now breaking into YouTube. And then he joins that vlog squad, and it's how he kind of blows up and becomes famous. But then like the squad kind of gets too big and an accident happens, and I can't make this up because art kind of imitates reality. I swear this actually happened to the real life vlog squad, that this book was based on. And this was written before anything. This was just, they were like just killing it on YouTube. So I just wrote a book about what it would be like to be part of a squad like that, but wrapped around the story of the tragedy of The Great Gatsby. So in the end, like an accident happens while filming, and it tears him down, and it basically, the main character heads home like defeated, but yet he's grown and learned from it through his YouTube channel, and just like, you know, kind of you can live vicariously through that life. And I don't know, I wrote this book, and then I don't know if you ever heard the traumas. Someone in the vlog squad, they were swinging around in a tractor, and they actually got injured on it pretty bad, like almost died, and it pretty well shut down the vlog squad for, I don't know, they were like fighting over it and who owes money for who or whatnot. In this, their YouTube channel gets deleted. But I don't know, it's just like, I tried to make the cover like a YouTube video. Like, here's the video, here's the title, and here's the comments, just my name. But yeah, so that was that. And so yeah, it's The Great Gatsby, but 100 years later, and about YouTube and TikTok, and then like you know, the old money versus new money. It's kind of like YouTubers versus TikTokers, and like the guy, instead of coming from World War I or whatever, it's kind of got an Iraq, Afghanistan background. Like, he's older, and he made it on Vine, and that's why he's doing so good at TikTok and using that for YouTube, and like the new YouTubers are annoyed by him. So yep, that's that one. Actually, if you go down on this channel, I have a playlist where I read this book out loud on my channel, the entire book, down below in a playlist. You can listen to this book if you want, read by me to you. It's down there. Anyway, that is all my books. I write one every morning with my coffee, so more books will come eventually. But I'm about to have a baby, so maybe not. But so far, I'm almost halfway done with my next book. But I'm writing it really slow. I'm on like a 2-year. I write 100 words a day with my coffee, and then I head to make YouTube videos. But alright, that's it. All the books massaged and all their stories told. It took me 14 more minutes than I thought. Sorry.